Jai Sudev, and welcome everyone to another edition of the Vihangam Yog Global Online Satsang. My name is Abhinav, joining from Australia, and I'm very humbled to bring this platform to you once again. For those of you joining for the first time, a warm welcome. For those of you who returned once more, thank you for your ongoing support. I firstly hope everyone is doing well. You know, as I'm sure you're all aware, we've entered November. 2020 seems to be just around the corner. For some of you like me, you may be wondering how the year flew by, and for some of you maybe even going through the process of reflecting on the year which passed. And it seems that it's quite apt that today's discussion is very reflective in nature. You know, today we'll be diving into the depths of the Swarved, a distillation of the spiritual experiences which Anant Shrii Sadguru Sadafal Devji Maharaj had in his own journey through the depths of spirituality. And his journey is one which we can all learn from, and one in which he defined the boundaries and the concepts and the kind of the ocean of spirituality in a very clear way for each of us seekers to really dive into it and understand and apply it to our lives in a meaningful way. So today we'll be looking at, you know, the secrets from the Swarved, you know, mainly the control of mind and how to achieve success in this endeavor. You know, day in, day out, you know, it seems like there's two forces within us, you know, one which kind of seems to be what we want to do and one which seems to pull us away from what we want to do. And it can be very frustrating. It can be very disempowering. You can feel very, you know, very uncontrolled and like you're not able to achieve what you want to achieve. And it's a very difficult state to be in. But thankfully, the masters of spirituality and, you know, Sadguru Sadafal Devji Maharaj himself has given us a way to think through these things. So today, equipped with our global panel, we'll be diving into this very topic and journey through the lens of the science of Vihangam Yoga. As we go through, I'll extend a warm welcome to each of our speakers. You know, we'll be joined by people from all over the world, and I'm really excited to see where we end up today. With the blessings of the Master, we're now equipped to dive further into our topic of the day, secrets of the Swarved, mind control and success. As always, if you have any questions or thoughts to share as you're starting to think through this topic about, you know, what the mind is and how we can control it better, we have two avenues available to you. The URL you can see on your screen right now is slido.com/VIGOS, as well as a WhatsApp number which you can submit questions to, which is just coming up on the screen right now. So as we go through today, you know, we'll be having a really interesting conversation with two very eminent speakers. So we'd love to hear what you all have to say about this topic, what thoughts you have, what concerns you have, maybe some personal experiences you want to share, anything at all. We'd love to hear from you all. So I'd like to firstly extend a warm welcome to our two speakers for today. You know, we're very lucky to have both of these individuals join us today. I've had the distinct pleasure of communicating with them on a variety of topics in the last year or so. And it's always fascinating to hear from both of them. And we all learn a lot from them. So firstly, I'd like to extend a warm welcome to Raghavji from India. He's an associate director at Bridge to India. So I hope you can hear me, Raghavji.
Yes, thank you, Abhinavji. Loud and clear.
Awesome. And also would like to extend a welcome to Subhasji, who is based in Singapore and is a director of Aon, a director at Aon, and is an actuarial by profession and has been in Vihangam Yoga for many, many years. So I hope you can also hear me, Subhasji.
Yes, Abhinavji. Thank you very much.
Awesome. Well, it's so good to have you both here. And you know, today's topic, we have a very interesting topic which touches upon I'd say everyone who's diving into this with us today, which is mind control and success. And I thought we could start with kind of looking at some of the terms in the topic itself. We've all heard the word mind, and depending on our different experiences, we may have different ideas of what the mind is and what its function is. So I'd love to understand, perhaps first from Raghavji. Let's start with the mind and what is it? What does it do? Where is it? Could you maybe just shed some light on that for all of us listeners?
Sure. Thank you, Abhinavji. And it's so wonderful to be back here. It's an honor for me to be speaking here again. Detailing the areas of the mind, I think based on my previous experiences and discussions with all the young engineers and budding professionals that I have had the opportunity to speak to, the focus there upon in that stage of their career is, or rather when they're shaping up their careers, are how do I control my mind? How do I better manage my time? So it all really boils down to self-discipline and controlling the mind. So we begin by controlling the mind because that is where the the action and the rest of the things, the rest of the day, everything starts. Taking forward the concept of the mind, when we discuss in terms of what the mind is, we look at it not just in terms of theory, but from an action perspective. What is it that we need to know that can enable us to move from one level of mind control to a higher level of mind control? Yeah, it should not just be theoretical, and it should not be something that doesn't really exist in reality and makes us any better. So the first thing that I have understood from the Swarved is that when we look at the mind, we're really looking at two divisions of a certain construct that really drives us. That is, so there's the mind, which is like the uncontrollable mind, you could say, that we call man. And then there is the intellect, or it's the buddhi. So the buddhi means that is the conscious area of the mind, the more deliberate area, where, for example, if I say that, okay, I'm sitting down to say study, and then as I open the books and I start to read, my mind wanders, right? It sees a particular, maybe a diagram, and then it wanders to something else. So it's wandered out of the book. It's gone into a past sensory experience, primarily a visual experience. So we see that we've seen a diagram, and the brain or the mind has actually linked it to something else. So from one tree to another, the mind keeps jumping like a monkey. So we start off with the diagram in the book, which you're supposed to study, and then we've gone on to something else that was associated with the diagram. And then from that, we've gone on to something else. So in a span of a few minutes, we see that we have not really studied what we started to study. We have not worked towards a goal, but we have made multiple jumps. And that is the unconscious or the uncontrollable mind. And then again, what we do is we use the buddhi to get it under control. So you could say that in certain ways, in the initial part of the journey, the buddhi plays the role of the charioteer, while the mind is the uncontrollable horse or the monkey, which keeps, galloping away or jumping around here and there. So that is one way of looking at it from a very preliminary perspective. The other higher way of looking at it, and I'm sure I hope we can get Subhash's views on this, is that the soul starts to exert its power at a later stage, and it starts to get the mind and the external, the flow, outward flow of our mental energy into the sensory world, primarily through eyes and other visual senses. So when we see all these myriad objects in the world, we see, we have these experiences of, taste, sound, everything. All of these sit in like a hard drive of our brain. And then when we seek to do something, we have these mental jumpings happen. And when we have to seek to control them, there is a particular way that the Swarved prescribes. And I am sure we shall go into it a little later. But first, if I could get Subhashji's views on the same.
Yeah, that'd be lovely.
Yeah, thank you, Abhinavji, and thank you, Raghavji, as well. Very nicely explained. Just to add a few more things on mind, one thing we definitely have to think in this way. We are body, we have body, and in this body we have sense organs which functions. But if these sense organs are functioning, there must be some basis for the functioning of these sense organs. Mind actually connects with all these sense organs. If the mind is not connected with these sense organs, you can try at one time, these sense organs would not work. The mind sends the signal to these sense organs, and that's how these sense organs work, and that's how we realize things in this world, whatever is happening. So mind is basically a connector. Of course, it connects us with the outer world, but as Raghavji mentioned, it doesn't stop at one point. It has a nature of flickering around from one object to another. That's how it is in fact defined, that it doesn't stay at one point. But the interesting point here is, the more it moves from one point to another, the more it flickers around, the more it has monkey kind of property, we are losing our energy more and more. And that's why this mind actually plays a vital role for us to be efficient, to be effective as well. Because if mind is not working on one particular thing as focused as it has to be, we would have problem. So this mind works with the help of sense organs, and vice versa is also true. Few things are there, like we have 5 sense organs, but as Raghavji mentioned, we have mind, we have intellect, we have chitta also, which is the storage, memory storage hardware, you can say, or even software kind of thing. And then we have ego. All these things work together, where mind plays a very vital role connecting all of these in the outer world.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's super interesting to hear about. And, you know, as I'm thinking through this, I feel like from what you both mentioned, it seems like, you know, when we look at systems, you know, in engineering, in any kind of field, this layer, this interface which connects different systems together is often the most important and the most powerful. So I wonder what you both think about and what the Swarved says about, you know, what the effects of controlling the mind are. Because, you know, as you both mentioned, it's this connecting layer between different systems of our existence. And it seems like if we can control it better, then there may be a lot of good effects, at least, you know, on a very elementary level. That's what it seems like. Would that be accurate to say, Subhashi and Raghavji?
Yes, Abhinavji. In Swarved, Swamiji has mentioned at many places about mind and its characteristics, how it can be controlled, how it functions. And at one point, if I remember correctly, Swamiji mentioned in Swarved, Man Swarup Saitan ko bin mare nahi shant, which means he has given a word, shaitan, means it's the devil, it's the evil one, which need to be controlled, which need to be killed. Basically, he used the word bina mare nahi shant, but killing is not really in terms of killing. It actually relates to stopping its flickering nature. At one point, Swamiji has mentioned in Swarved that mind has 2 different variety. He has said, शुद्ध अशुद्ध दो भेद है, मन ही अवस्था होय, इंद्र न संग अशुद्ध है, शुद्ध सोम रस होय. Swamiji mentioned that mind has 2 types. One, he said, Shuddh, the pure one, and one is the impure one. As long as the mind is connected with all these sense organs, it is considered to be impure. But when the mind connects to the consciousness, the conscious entity, the soul, it becomes the pure. What is the meaning of impure and pure is very much connected to this flickering around here and there of the nature of the mind. As long as the mind is connected with these sense organs, it would never stop at one point. It would just deviate us from one to another, from this to that. Whatever past we have experienced, it drags us towards all those experiences. Whereas if we can give a control to the mind in such a way that it is in our control, we control it. We means we have to define we. We means I'm not talking about mind. I'm talking about the entity I, the soul. When we control mind, it can do wonders. Really, it can do lots of wonders, because without help of mind, we cannot do outside anything. But if we have to do things outside, we have to control it. In a very simple example, if there is a river flow and it just goes beyond control, it can do all bad things in that area. But if suppose we prepare a dam on that river at one point, then we can control it as and when it is required to use, and in which form we can utilize it as well. In the same way, mind is very powerful. If we can give the control to the mind, then we can utilize it in a much more better and efficient way. Abhinavji.
Yeah, like that's very encouraging to know. And obviously something we should all aim for. And I wonder, Raghavji, if you could maybe shed some light on maybe the specific like physical, mental, and overall like specific effects that control of mind actually has on a person. Just as someone who's curious about this, like if I sit down and meditate twice a day as we do in Vihangam Yoga, and I start to control my mind, what kinds of things does the Swarved convey that we can expect in terms of winning over the mind and winning over the world in a sense?
Yes, Abhinavji. So as Subhashji said, that particular verse from the Swarved which talks about the Man Swarup Shaitan, which means that the mind is evil. It plays the role of a devil. We see that if we need to gain the benefits of the mind, we have to undergo the process. I might be jumping a couple of levels over here. We have to undergo a process, but the start of the process, it really depends on how much surrender, how much faith the person has in the guide, in the overall spiritual guide. So if the person who has been given the knowledge of this particular process, and it's a very simple, it's a very graded process. So anyone who is not even literate, if he's given the process, he or she can do the process and he can move to a higher level of mental control. But it's very important to have faith and surrender for the Sadguru. So, for example, because we are looking at a very difficult subject, mind control is something that we could spend our entire lives searching for and yet not achieve it. Therefore, for such a difficult subject, you really need an empowered master who is all-knowing, right? Who is completely, fully competent, and you have to have your faith in him. Thereafter, when you, as per his guidance, as per what he says, if you do that particular process the way it is to be done, the way it is designed to be done, then your system integration, like Subhashi was referring to, that the mind is the connector of all. Now, because the mind is the connector of all, and as it starts to come under control, all the other things that the mind is linked to, they also start to come under control. So you will see that if you don't have a proper daily routine, you will have a daily routine. If you are addicted to say substance use or say abuse, you will get off it. That is the most visible thing that I have seen. That I have seen friends and people whom I have known to be smokers for 20, 30 years. They've been able to kick the habit without too much of an effort. It just so happens that one day, it's gone. The cigarette does not appeal to them anymore. It just doesn't appeal to them, and they find it repugnant. I mean, it's just like a non-smoker coming into a smoker's cabin and rushing away. They just that's the amazing way that this technique works. So the outward the calibration of success is so apparently visible, but it comes after certain amount of effort and patience. So the Swarved refers to the patience as well, and it says, "Shane shane abhyas mein rahe nirantar lag, man va pavan mandal chute, pahunche anubhav jad." So shane shane is Hindi for slowly, dhire dhire, which means slowly and slowly, step by step, you could say. When we have nirantar niyam purvak karne se, which means that you are doing it as it is designed on a regular basis. We do this process that the Sadguru teaches us. We see that the man, that is the mind, and the linkage between, and I should bounce this off Subhashji as well. So this wonderful verse really refers to, and it's a reference that comes repeatedly in the Swarved, man va pavan mandal chute. So that means there is a particular stage where the mind and the breath is intertwined. They are both intertwined. And when we see in the process that we are focusing on that particular point of initiation, we see that we realize that our breathing, that pace slows down. So even though we are tense, when we are tense, we see when the mind is jumping, we see that we are breathing in a certain way, if we are conscious to that. When we are doing this particular process, in the process of mind control, that breath slows down and it becomes balanced between both the nostrils. So it becomes what we call sum. That means the left nostril and the right nostril, kind of the breathing from that balances out. So that is another great indicator that the mind is coming under control. What do you think about this, Subhaji?
Yeah, Raghavji, there are different symptoms for controlling of the mind. And of course, what you mentioned is about the left nostril and right nostril. The flow will be very much balanced. But I think there are many more things. I think I would like to mention one more thing here. And that is, controlling mind is really very important for everyone. I mean, whether we are talking about spirituality or in our daily life working or even family life or anything, if the mind is not focused, if the mind is not controlled, we have been seeing there are lots of problems appearing here and there to many people. The mind has different stages and it has different locations at different time also. When we are awake, of course, it has one position. When we are sleeping, it goes somewhere else, and so on and so forth. But when we talk about the breathing, when we talk about the pranas, the mind and pranas are very much linked with each other. In fact, the movement of the mind happens with the help of the movement of the pranas as well. So that's why when we talk about controlling the mind, when we talk about purifying the mind, we cannot ignore the pranas, the breathing and other associated pranas with it. We have to think about, we have to know how pranas also work and what actually its functions are. Because without controlling the pranas, because those are the carriers inside our body, there are 5 different types of pranas and 5 sub-pranas as well. We have to see the connection between the mind and the prana as well. Because if we don't control the prana, then it would be very difficult for us to control the mind also. Swamiji also has mentioned at many different places in Swarved how the mind and the prana are linked with each other, and with the help of controlling both the mind and the prana, we can control the whole body system in a very different and efficient way. And this actually increases our inner power. And that's how we move towards the inner journey. As far as left nostril and right nostrils are concerned, of course, that is one of the beginning stage for the control of the mind, but it doesn't stop just there. It goes beyond that stage. Maybe at one time we would discuss more about some different terminologies like Sushmana and other things as well, which actually helps us to understand how these pranas and mind are linked with each other and can be stabilized at one point. Right now we are breathing through nostrils, left nostril and right nostril. There is a system inside our body where these pranas and the mind itself can reach to a different place, a different level. Once it reaches there, the mind stops flickering around here and there. So there are different stages, there are different symptoms on which basis we can actually identify, okay, whether the mind has now started stopping or not flickering around here and there.
Yeah, thank you both for that incredibly clear explanation. And if I could just kind of, share a small personal anecdote. Like one thing I've definitely felt as I have, practiced Vihangam Yoga is I can be much more true to my own decisions. So, as we go through life, we have different choices we need to make. I get up in the morning, I might take a decision that I want to exercise. I want to, walk to work, whatever it is. And, as Raghavji and Subhashi were explaining, the mind kind of pulls us away from these choices we want to make at some points. And it is a very empowering kind of feeling to be able to direct yourself in the direction you want to go. And there's definitely a personal thing that I just wanted to layer into our conversation. Like, I wonder if that would kind of ring true to you both as well, Raghavji and Subhashi. Maybe we'll start with Raghavji.
Sorry, I missed you for a bit, Abhinavji. What was the question again, please?
Yeah, sorry. So I was just saying, like, in my personal experience, like, I felt very empowered, in the way that, when we start to control the mind, we can take better choices and decisions in our lives in accordance with the principles, you both have talked about. So I was just wondering if that kind of rings true in terms of the experiences you both have with the practice of meditation and Vihangam Yoga at large.
Oh, absolutely. So I would say that, that layer of confusion that envelops us. So decision making, for example, whenever we need to make a decision and we have difficult choices or choices that look the same to us, and we have to choose between, say, multiple choices or even between two choices, we see that doing the process of meditation the way it has been taught to us and achieving significantly high amounts of mind control gives us immense ability to be better decision makers, to have better disciplined lives. So that would mean, for me, for example, like you said, that you sharing from your experience, for me it's been something like I would have an indisciplined life, you could say, where I would go to sleep at any time between, say, 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. and then the rest of the following day would get disturbed. When I do the meditation process the way Vihangam Yoga teaches us to, I see that it gives me in particular a set routine. So in a span of a few days, say within 7 days, I would say, I am able to get certain experiences and I'm able to make significantly enhanced changes, very visible changes. So that's the kind of thing that even others, my family members who are staying with me, they can also make out that now I go to sleep within half an hour, plus minus 15 minutes of the same time. And then I wake up also at around the same time without the need of an alarm also, many of the times. So that process gets synchronized, life gets into a particular discipline, and so we are able to have many advantages of having a healthy life. So to start with, I think health is most important. And the way for students, for professionals, for anyone, householders, homemakers, whosoever the person may be, however young or old he or she may be, everyone needs a somewhat disciplined life, and mind control is immensely beneficial and helpful there. Subhashi, what do you think of it?
Yes, Raghavji, I very much agree with you. In fact, in our current situational life, in this modern life, everyone is very busy. Whoever we are talking about, at least those who are working, and everyone is working somewhere here and there. One example I want to give here, I mean, specifically about me, how experience I have been getting. One day, my wife actually was seeing me that I am doing at one time multiple tasks. Something was related with office, at the same time something was related with Vihangam Yoga, at the same time something happened in the family, something was happening here in Singapore also, and I was trying to manage and communicate each and everything very clearly, whichever it was required. And my wife was thinking and asking me, how do you do this? I told her only one thing, that once there is a clarity in the mind, whichever and whatever we are working on, if it is clear, we just need to communicate at that time point efficiently, and that's it. So what I see from my experience is the practice of Vihangam Yoga meditation as well as reading Swarved, both I think has helped me to keep the clarity of my mind. Because many times we have to take fast decisions, whether in the office or in family or in friend life or wherever it is, we have to make fast decisions. And the fast decisions can be made in a right way only when we have complete clarity about something. Many times, because of the uncontrollability of the mind nature, we are not able to focus at one particular thing, and mind moves from one point to another all the time. Okay, this happens, then what that happened, and so on and so forth. And we are not able to make a proper decision at one time point. I think if we practice meditation on a daily basis, regularly, just 10 minutes morning, and if possible, 10 minutes in the evening, it really does a magic. It really does a magic. At that time point, probably the practitioner would not understand how it is happening, but as and when the progression happens, the practitioner will realize the mechanism behind it, how it happens. There is a mechanism how this mind works. And one important thing I want to emphasize here about how reading Swarved actually helps in controlling the mind is, it is very, again, magical, or in a very different way I want to put it. When I read Swarved, and I'm sure this experience has happened or would have happened with many of the other practitioners and the reader of the Swarved as well. When we read Swarved and we try to understand the meaning, what has been mentioned there, I don't know, somewhere, somehow, the mind starts working very differently, very, very differently. And I find myself very much balanced immediately after that, or at that time itself, very balanced, very clear. And if there were any disturbance here and there, all these simply just vanish. So reading Swarved, I think Swamiji has mentioned at one place and another that all those mantras which we know, which we have heard here and there, Swamiji has mentioned that Rishio mantra drashtara. The rishis, the saints, actually, whenever the mantras or sutras, etc., has been created, these are not just created on the thought process basis. These mantras have been seen first. In fact, Sadguru Sadafal Devji Maharaj also, when he was writing Swarved, the verses of Swarved, first he used to close his eyes and then he sees all those letters and all those words, and then he writes it down, then he put it down on the pen. So there is a mechanism behind these words linked with the atoms and molecules. we are not talking about atoms and molecules of those atoms and molecules which we know in physics. It's beyond that. There are spiritual atoms and molecules also. When we read Swarved, when we read the words, the letters of Swarved, the atoms and the molecules, those spiritual atoms and molecules impact our mind as well. And it's really incredible experience.
Yeah, I'd really like to just, just mention that I totally can see that in my own experiences as well. Like when I need to take a difficult decision, I actually do a little trick where I read some verses from the Swarved and then I go and take that decision, and it really does help. And it kind of brings me to an interesting point as well in the Swarved, a concept, which is, we've heard about all these different things and the incredible effects which meditation and reading of Swarved has on the control of mind. I'd love to understand more from Subhashi and Raghavji, from both of you. What is this process of purushartha defined as in Swarved? Like, what is that process? What does it entail? How does Swamiji really explain it? And what do we need to take away from his explanation as seekers? So maybe we could start with you, Subhashi, and dive into this a bit.
Thank you, Vinodji. I think in our normal life also, and day-to-day life also, when we start working, we have been hearing all the times that we have to come out from our comfort zone. Once we start going out from our comfort zone, we start learning things. So going out from comfort zone, what does that mean? That simply means that there is an area, there is a boundary. Inside that boundary, we are very much comfortable doing anything. And what happens is, if we try to put out our leg outside that comfort zone, the fear starts. The fear of failure starts. The fear of uncomfortableness starts. And that's how the mind works. Mind always try to put us in the comfort zone where we have been or what we have experienced in previous. What we have to do when we have to go beyond, to control the mind, we have to take a step forward. The first step is very important. And mind doesn't let us do that, because everything we are doing to control the mind. When we have to start controlling the mind will not let us do that. So we have to do some purusharth, some extra effort to be made in such a way that we come out from that comfort zone. And Swamiji had mentioned at many places in Swarved also that this purusharth, the purusharth means the effort, the extra effort to achieve a milestone is very important. Otherwise, just thinking that, something will happen on its own automatically, I don't need to do anything, whatever I have, I can achieve, is not enough. We have to take our first step forward. And very interestingly, based on my own experience, I have seen that when we take a step forward, Swamiji is very much available to help us. Because when we take the first step, it may be possible that we are not experienced enough. That's why probably we are in the zone of fear. But if we believe in Sadgurudev, if we surrender ourselves to Sadgurudev, believe me, he is there to help us all the times. So the first step, the purusharth, the effort for the first step is very important. Abhinaji.
Yeah, thank you, Subhashi. That very much rings true. And, Swamiji also explains, to my knowledge in the Swarved, that there's three kinds of exercises done at the level of Tan, Man, and the Atma. And I think you very much dove into that very clearly for us. Like, there is a master of all these three, and that is the master of Vihangam Yoga, who, after so many years of intense practice and search, he discovered and he came about these this treasure trove of experiences. And I wonder, Raghavji, as we're speaking about this concept of putting effort in and purusharth, what would you say are the most primary ways in which we can do this? Is it a matter of meditating? Is it a matter of reading the Swarved? Is there a certain, are there certain things which the master conveys to us as in the Swarved as being the most important?
Yes, Abhinavji. So as Subhashji said, we need to go out of our comfort zone and we need to have deliberate effort. This is not going to happen by itself. One of the verses from the Swarved which encapsulates all of this in a very, very concise way is the one on Purusharth, which means, hard work or, dedicated effort. And that goes as this. That's Brahm Prapti liye jo kare, sadhan sakal upay. So Brahm means the Supreme Lord. And to attain him, to realize the Supreme Lord, how do we do this? Par Purusharth janiye, shabd mein surati samay. So the verse goes, Brahm Prapti liye jo kare, sadhan sakal upay, par Purusharth janiye, shabd mein surati samay. So the methods that he's given for mind control, the Purusharth that he explains, is in terms of sadhana, which means meditation. So when we sit down and the way meditation has been taught to us, once we do meditation regularly and consistently, we achieve the desired results. But like we had discussed earlier, this is a process that requires that shane approach. So that means let us not be impatient. For some people, because it's about many lives. So we need to tune our mind, body, the pranas, the breath, the spirit, everything into a certain, you could say, level. And that takes different, amounts of time for different people. So for example, when I started off, when I was very young, I was in high school, I was not consistent. And so for 2-3 years, I had no particular experience. But the moment I became consistent towards my, that's very interesting. So I had my +2, the examinations. And there is nothing that puts the fear of God into a student more than the fear of examinations. So I took up meditation very rigorously and in a disciplined way. And I saw that the effort bore fruit. And I was able to, get the kind of marks that would get me into one of the country's premier colleges. So I made that big jump over there. And so as I was explaining, the verse says, so you need to do sadhan, you need to do samast prayatna. That means all the efforts that Subhashi was talking about. If you go out of your comfort zone and you go into the process that has been taught to you and you make those prayatna means efforts, then these are all necessary. But what is even more necessary is what Subhashi was alluding to earlier, and I had referred to briefly, is that faith in the Sadguru, which will exhibit itself in terms of seva. So you see, when we talk about meditative processes, some of this can become so abstract for us in implementation. When we look at thousands of our fellow meditators, we feel that just like we had when we had started, they're also having problems being regular, being consistent. So how do you do that? Is one of the greatest things that one of the easiest and the most fundamental things that Subhashi had explained was to read the Swarved. So when you read the Swarved, it is not like reading a normal textbook, or it's not just a simple manual. It is actually a portal. So every verse over there is like a mantra. So you have, the Buddhist mantras, the Hindu mantras, you have verses in other religions. So the Swarved really opens up. It's like a portal. It opens up a doorway and you are able to receive, you could say, those energies or those alignments which cause you to move towards a greater level of mind control. So sadhan, the effort prayatna, Seva, which means dedicated effort at the service of the Sadguru, at the service of Vihangam Yoga. In case you're not able to connect to the Vihangam Yoga organization as such, you can help in the efforts at spreading Vihangam Yoga, talking about it to your friends, discussing it with your family, maybe taking them to a VY program, or even getting them to listen to a simple online platform session like this. So that would be Seva. Then finally, satsang. This is another thing that's very important, and that this verse refers to. So this means it's the company of good people, or you could say good company. In this particular context, it means a slightly spiritually aligned company, and that is best achieved through the company of fellow Vihangam yogis, and that is what we should reach out to, so that we discuss more of this, we are better aligned with this, and we are more consistent, and all of these help us to maintain that final approach that takes us to a higher plane.
Yeah, that's a incredible explanation from both yourself and Subhashji. And this whole idea of stretching yourself beyond your comfort zone is something which I feel we can all embrace in our own ways, but it will arguably have the same effect on all of us in that it opens up the doors, as you've just beautifully mentioned, Raghavji. So we're kind of reaching toward the end of our session. I wanted to say a huge thanks to both of you, Raghavji and Subhashji. I think it's always very difficult for seekers like us to sometimes understand what is the framework by which we can guide our lives, by which we can incite change in our lives. And I think the concepts which you both brought out, and the kind of actions such as going beyond your comfort zone, reading the Swarved, practicing meditation, seva, satsang, I think these are all things which we think about at different points in our life, but we don't really maybe we don't dedicate ourselves to it as much as we can. And I hope today's conversation has given all of us something to think about, and I'd really like to thank you both for joining us. So thank you, Raghavji, and thank you, Subhashji.
Thank you, Abhinavji.
Thank you, Abhinavji. Thank you, Subhashji.
So that brings us toward the end of another session of the Vihangam Yoga Global Online Satsang. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. And, I'd love to share just a small closing thought on the Swarved. In my time, interacting with the Swarved, interacting with different philosophies of the world, I'm always searching personally, and I'm sure everyone is, for ways and systems of thinking by which we can encapsulate these different ways of looking at the world. And one of the most striking things that I have personally found about the Swarved, as we kind of, would have seen today as well, is that it is very difficult to contain the Swarved within a particular system of thinking. It is, an ocean of knowledge. And if you were to ask me, is an hour enough to dive into the Swarved, I would very emphatically say that it is nowhere near enough. Because the Swarved is very much an ocean. And when you pick up a droplet of that ocean, you find another ocean within that droplet. And you want to keep spending time understanding it. So, I think today, as we heard from Raghavji and Subhashji, the Swarved is a picture and a portal of experience. And we can spend, time seeking to understand it, which we should, but also we should definitely seek time trying to experience it. And, my hope is that today we all got a bit of an insight into how the Swarved and the concept of Swarved and meditation of Vihangam Yoga help us to better control our mind and achieve more success in our lives. So I'd love to, join you all again next week. I'm sure we'll have another incredible, set of speakers. And for this week, it will end. So thank you, everyone. Jai Gurudev, and have a great week ahead. See you next time.
शांति प्रदान कर सदाफल शांतिमय, शांति शांति सुख शांति।